Perfect, thank you. My name is Eric Pena. I know a good majority of you are at least seen your faces. But I am with the city's innovation team. For those who don't know, Brandon, perfect timing. Could you sign in for us, please? I'll start by saying there are snacks, bagels, juices, anything. Grab at your leisure. But for those who don't know me and the work that I do, I am part of the city's innovation team. We do internal facing process improvement stuff and then innovation work, which can involve things in the community such as this. I want to get a temperature check on how aware people are of what brought us to this point. I know some of you have been here along every step of the way, but would it be helpful if I gave just kind of a almost chronological order of how we got to this point? Brandon, do you think that might be helpful?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, all right, perfect. But before we do that, I do want to hear people's names and kind of your association to Wall Town. We can start here.
Hey, I'm Daniel. I live on the 1200 block of Clarendon Street.
Okay.
Justin, I live in that same spot.
I'm Adrian, I live in Old Town, Clarendon.
I'm Amy, I live right next to the States and have lived in Old Town for 20 years.
I'm April, I live on the front.
I'm Danny, I live on the corner of Clarendon and Ave, where we did last month in Branchville.
Which corner?
So it's the, directionally, I couldn't tell you that, but it's the, it's the 1301, it's the yellow and purplish, the handy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me, I'm David Tucker, with my wife, and I live at the corner of Sprunt and Clarendon.
Megan, I lived at the corner of Sprunt kitty corner from the properties we're discussing for 20 years.
Grady, very straight to you.
The rest of the team, if you can just introduce yourself and a little bit about kind of the work you do.
My name is Julie. I'm here representing New Hope Bird Alliance, and we're currently partnering up with Keep Durham Beautiful and doing invasive removal in Durham parks. But we advocate for that.
I'm Ashley. I am the horticulture agent for Durham County Cooperative Extension. So, like, if you have horticulture questions, I would love to talk to you about that.
Hey everyone, I'm Andrew Holland. I'm the Assistant Director in the Budget and Customer Service Department. I oversee the Office of Performance and Innovation, also known as
I'm Lindsay, I manage the innovation team at the city with Eric.
I'm Brandon Williams. I'm at Inglewood and Onslow. Been there since, well, I've been in the neighborhood since 2013.
Before we get too deep in the trenches, I do want to let everybody know we are recording. This is for transparency and for anybody who couldn't make it today, that we can send it out. It's not a hybrid meeting. It's just something that we will ideally send out to folks so they can tag along if they were not part of today's discussion for whatever reason. Any questions before I get rolling? Perfect. So how we got here, basically you see the shirt says love your block. The city's innovation team applied for a grant around the concept of paper streets. Paper streets are just those streets that through a lot of times speculative development or any other kind of development reason were put on a tax plat map. It has been approved and put in old map systems, but does not actually exist in reality in the way that you think of a normal road. As such, they're in kind of a maintenance limbo. A lot of times there will be sewer easements, which is the case on this one, or like a Duke Power easement, like an air right easement. But many times they're just overgrown and it's unclear as to kind of how they're meant to be maintained. We thought that there would potentially be some interesting lines of work around what could you do on these spaces. How do you, encourage maintenance if there is, illegal dumping, which does happen. I was just telling somebody earlier that if you see a no dumping sign, it's probably a paper street in Durham. So we received that grant. We got money for projects. We decided to start in Walltown because we had some one call data one call, for those of you who don't know, is our basically 311 system where people will call in and, have any sort of concern or have something that they need, the city will route them in the correct direction. We saw that there was some illegal dumping in Walltown, and we figured that this would be a good place, having data to start this conversation. This is one of a few sites that we have in Walltown related to the Love Your Block grant. A variety of things are happening. I won't go into too much detail right now, but you can go on our website. You just search Love Your Block Durham. You'll find what's happening around the rest of Walltown. But this site was one that was interesting to us because we also started as part of the small area plan discussion around public land, how it's being used. And Sprunt Avenue is one of those paper streets that I was mentioning. There are a couple, there's one that actually abuts the park, but it is just kind of like the parking over on the other side. So that there's not a ton going on there. And so we started these conversations. Sprunt Avenue was one that we looked at. There's a couple signs on the Clarendon side, the Sedgefield side that say, Sedgefield is your neighborhood, please help us keep it clean, which was interesting to us, as almost a cue to care, which I've heard some folks say, basically that, there was an illegal dumping problem there. We, had a few rounds of like project submission ideas. Some folks submitted this place as one for invasive removal. We had a workshop a while back as part of the small area planning discussion around like, what would you like to see at this site, if anything? We got some good ideas there. And then we had some folks reach out and say, that's actually not the direction we want to go. We had a letter, there were some folks that signed a petition, effectively saying, we do not want this site to be turned into a park, which was a word that was being used at that point. And so we have been having some discussions. I started reaching out to folks at the Cooperative Extension, New Hope Alliance, the state level extension around stream bank restoration and things like that, because there were some concerns around the ecological impact of anything that would happen there. And so I wanted to bring in folks and kind of have those conversations. We've done a couple site visits. We've done some cleanups. We organized 2 cleanups and pulled out about 575 pounds of litter just from that Sprunt Avenue site. And so today, though, we are here to talk about kind of where do we align, what are your concerns? This is a forum in which people can share those, those feelings and their perspectives. I just want to gather as many perspectives, the broad spectrum of perspectives that are existing as it relates to the Sprunt Avenue site and any potential project that would happen on there. Any questions at this point?
Perfect. Yeah, fine. Could you actually share some more of the data, like how many one call complaints vis-a-vis other areas, like what was the context?
So there were 8 sites in Walltown that had instances of illegal dumping, and illegal set outs, which is how they coded it in the system. We looked back probably until 2023, I believe, was the data that we had. And some of them were around alleys in Walltown. As we know, there are quite a few alleyways in Walltown. And so that was just to us an indicator of like, we should maybe look into this more. And that was kind of the whole genesis of the Paper Street project, was around in Walltown, a neighbor who was concerned about the littering in their alleyway. And then it came up to where the city was like, well, we don't actually maintain that technically. So that would be up to any residents who abut that, or any interested resident in the neighborhood to help keep that clean. Because that is not legally the city's maintenance responsibility. And so we were kind of very curious as to like, can we reach back out to some of those folks who had those one call instances? I don't want to give you the wrong number, so I can look back into that, and I'll include that in any follow-up. There's a map that shows kind of where they're at, where those sites were on those illegal set outs. One of the challenges with the data piece of Paper Streets is that because they're not technically on the map, you can't really say it happened here. So we have to use some proxy to get that information. Does that answer your question? Perfect. Ground rules. I want to go over some ground rules before we get started in the discussion piece. but the main goal for me today is that everyone feels heard, and that we're acknowledged respectfully. Also, we want to surface those shared values and concerns, like I said, on just clarifying differences in perspectives with curiosity and not judgment. We're here to learn from some of the experts, so we have Julie and Ashley here. I will invite them for a Q&A at the end, so, any questions you have directly about the site and the ecological, approaches, they would be the experts for that. Identify a range of acceptable outcomes. There's any number of things that can happen. We could do nothing on this site. I just want to find where people are. And then just capture any interest in like continued co-design, communication, or cleanup type stuff. If you're interested in that, obviously you all care enough to be here today. So I think that there's something that could happen as far as neighborhood cleanups or anything like that. We'll capture that at the end as well. I want us to assume best intent and just like we're seeking clarity and question ideas, not people necessarily. So first activity of the day, I want to do a shared value mapping. So the prompt for this is when you think about this space, what do you value most? You have sticky notes and pens in front of you. I will give you a few minutes. We'll do 2 minutes to write down 1 or 2 things that when you think about this space, what do you value most? And then we'll kind of talk about those, but I will start a timer. For those of you in the corner, I will bring some stickies to you.
And here, I got some. You can have a sticky.
You got about 30 seconds. That's our timer. I will invite anybody to share it. When you share it, I'll come grab your sticky note and put it up there, or if you want, just come and put it up here. But I will open the floor to anybody to start with kind of, when you think about Sprunt Avenue space, what is it that you value the most?
I put down, that it represents an opportunity for a shared space to enjoy, to carry on together and be proud. Thank you. Oh, the existing stream, wildlife, trees, etc.
Who would like to go next?
I value the peace and serenity of sitting on my porch The beauty of this big woodsy green space is on there, was a big thing. And just the pleasure and happiness, whatever, from living in a city, but in a neighborhood that has this beautiful, green, nature-filled, calming quietness of the neighborhood. You know, that's what I value about it. Thank you.
Mine was kind of similar, so an opportunity for engagement with our local ecology. And then similar to Adrian's, a space where neighbors can see each other and the care we have for our community.
Well, I'll speak from the other side of the perspective. I want or would value a sense of order and neatness to the site. So I look at this, it's interesting how different people look at the same thing and have what was the difference. So I'm on the other end of the spectrum of when I sit at the dining room table and drink coffee, I see this work.
Thank you.
I like that there are no people in the space. I think it's beautiful just like it is. I like that it's unkempt and wild in the sense that it's not manicured and maintained. I like that there's diverse wildlife and that their invasives provide a thick year-round dense green cover.
Thank you so much. Anybody else write anything down?
I wrote, I value the trees, I think, and particularly the high canopy, so like having like walked the neighborhood a bunch, and like thinking about, even when I drive down Guest Road, like you can see the trees from that space there. And that reminds me just more like of the kind of beautiful lush greenness of North Carolina generally, and what I love about the state. So it feels like a welcome disruption to me, like or balance kind of in this urban landscape that you kind of have this kind of lush green area.
I had a friend in from out west. And they were like, it's so green here, and I'm like, oh, it's just Western North Carolina, and you know, to me, it's just, that just is what it is, but then also when I go out west, I'm like, why is it so brown? You know, but it, you know, but it's so interesting and almost novel, to a lot of other people that come here, that I think sometimes even I take it for granted. Anybody else have anything that they wrote down?
That wasn't already said.
Okay, perfect. So there are some similarities here, right? Everybody's they value that greenness that is increasingly rare kind of in some of the urban environments, particularly the more downtown we get. So I think that there's definitely some opportunity to find that, you know, that is the middle ground.
Any other ones to put up there, even if you could check?
We'll move on then. I want to hear people's concerns. So what concerns or fears do you have about changing or not changing this space? So I want you to write down something, there are 2 prompts here. What concerns do you have if we do something? And then what concerns do you have if we do nothing? Another 2 minutes again. And then we'll also be sharing out on these. So again, just if we do something, what's the concern? And if we do nothing, what's the concern? We got about a minute. Ten seconds. And if you need more time, as we're discussing it, you can just keep writing things down. Right, that's our timer. I would like to invite people to share out. We'll start with what concerns or fears do you have if we do something on this space?
Losing yet another green space in Durham area, the line of the United States, the world, you know, just yet another green space full of animals and life that isn't human, and it's just being torn down because of what people want. That's like my biggest fear, I think, about if we did something with this space that is radically different. Than just maintaining it or getting rid of it or something like that, you know, and then also just that if it wasn't opened up to people, just people hanging out, cutting through, you know, traffic and just. So, those are my fears.
Does anybody else?
I just really don't want people in the space. I don't want pedestrian traffic. I lived there for 10 years. They mow that space once a year and we get pedestrian traffic during that time. They haven't for the last 3 or 4 years, but I know what that looks like and I just am here to beg y'all not to open that space to people, really. And I also, with the invasives, like the idea of it being a one-time project to remove them, just seems unrealistic or will involve a massive amount of herbicide. And I can see that working as a long-term ongoing project to try to manage the invasives, which I've been doing in my backyard. It's an intense project. I've been on that line trying to maintain that barrier. But the idea that you're gonna go in and just clear out the invasives and keep the space like it is, or, you know, replace with natives and still not allow access to people and pedestrians. I know who uses that space when there's pedestrian access and it just seems unrealistic that there's gonna be a massive change like that. Not to eventually invite people into the space, even if it's just a walking trail to allow access from Clarendon to Sprunt.
Yeah.
And I speak on behalf of a lot of people who had things come up just this morning, got lots of texts about people who couldn't be here, but there are a lot more people who signed on to that letter who feel that way. There were more than 20 of us, and I think combined we had like 300 years in the neighborhoods.
Sure.
So
And
I think, yeah, I think it's also a matter of aesthetic. I know there's different aesthetics about how people feel about the sidewalk. I actually submitted a grant to tidy up the sidewalk space, that what you can see from the street, just to, in the hopes that that would keep people from doing anything to the interior of the space.
I see.
But I really don't even want that to happen. I just think that that's if people are unhappy with the way it looks, then fine, do something to the sidewalk so it looks different from the street. But I love the way it looks. I think most of us on those 2 blocks love the way it looks, except for the people who are here to speak to opposed to that. But yeah.
Was there anything particularly from the folks who texted you that you wanted to share, or was that?
Yeah,
summation?
well, one of them wrote, Vito sent a letter to
Mhm.
you also. I would love for one of you to read that. I mean, he said he hopes that it would get read, but he was unfortunately unable to make it.
Yeah.
He had expected to be here, but
Yeah,
if you want to read that letter, I can bring it up right now.
sure. And I did share that with the larger team of anybody who was involved on this project. So I wanna clarify or just confirm that we did receive that and acknowledge it and read it.
Somebody else. You don't read that.
Okay, hi Eric. I am writing about the Sprint Avenue paper street proposal. This is from Vito Lorenzo Debana. I am planning to be at the meeting tomorrow at Walton Rec Center to express my reservations with plan to charge ahead with changes that a few neighbors are promoting, but if I'm not able to attend for some reason, I wanted to share my concerns with you and your team directly. Please share with other folks as appropriate. First, a bit about me. I live on Clarendon Street with my spouse and 2 middle school age kids, not far from the Sprunt Street project proposal. I have lived in the area for most of my life, born in Walltown at Watts Hospital, went to Brogden, lived on Iredell Street during high school, worked at Northgate Mall, and have been here on Clarendon since 2009. Needless to say, we've seen many changes in Walltown, many of them very positive. I love the neighborhood and love my neighbors. Many of the neighbors that I admire the most don't agree with me on this issue or my vision for the Sprint Street space. But I don't doubt their care and concern for the neighborhood and me personally. It is with this mutual care in mind that I offer my opinions here. What I think of the Sprunt Street proposal. This is not a good idea and has divided the neighborhood. That it has been pushed so far along in the face of significant neighborhood opposition is baffling. I don't like this idea for a few reasons. The proposal addresses a problem with a mismatched solution. Litter and dumping at the site is real problem, but turning the site into a more accessible area is likely to make the problem worse, not better. Since the neighborhood was alerted to the problem and mobilized, the issue has been largely addressed. This is great, and I say we take the win. Second, the area is one of the few patches of wild in Walltown, provides habitat for many, many plants and living creatures. I can hear the birds call and sing, and insects too, whenever I pass when walking down Clarendon. I call it the Walltown Wilderness. To the folks who advocate for habitat restoration, I get it. That's important, but I have another take. I taught Tai Chi at Walltown Rec Center pre-pandemic and loved the part of Ellerby Creek that runs through that park, home to many plants and animals. That affection led me to organize a plant walk and river cleanup in partnership with ECWA and Keep Darn Beautiful. As you may expect, there were many non-native species were observed, but the lush beauty and habitat they provided was undeniable. Take the generous mulberry as an example. I can understand the impulse to restore a past balance and even the desire to foster native ecosystems. But the idea of removing and killing all non-native species in the city feels unrealistic and doesn't appreciate the life and balance that is here now. The parallels to our current national conversation about human immigrants occurs to me. Third, I fear that if made accessible, the Sprunt Paper Street area will eventually become a dangerous place where bad actors gather, inhospitable to both our animals and human neighbors. What I think should happen. Pause, listen, be sensitive, but first pause. The Walltown Wilderness is an uncut emerald gem in our neighborhood, and it's clear that it's so valued by so many. No need to rush and cut and polish. Just let it be for now. Thanks, Vito.
Does anybody else have something that they want to share on the, if we do something, what are your concerns?
Well, just like basically the structuring around, like, if there are changes, what is a process for, future adjustments to the changes, and also the challenges of making that changes, so that twofold, the long term, and, that process is, there's obviously diversity of opinions, but, just in terms of, feasibility and preference, just those short-term goals and long-term goals and picturing the structure of a project long-term is I feel important.
Something. I said if we do something, I would like for it to represent a balance, between everyone's perspectives and what they value in the space. I think there is great room for, coming to an agreement and, what is the word I'm looking for? Compromise. My brain isn't working this morning, but that's funny with coffee. Yeah, I think there is an opportunity for compromise here. I really do. We can all kind of just think about something where we could all be happy with it. I would love that. Yeah.
What are the concerns fears, any other similar word, if we do nothing on the Sprunt Avenue site?
My fear is that if we did nothing and didn't organize some sort of neighborhood cleanup, like that we would just be dealing with this same type of issue in 5 years, and I would be giving up work shifts and losing money again and again to keep doing this. That's my fear if we don't come to, you know, if we left it and the trash and quote unquote ugliness wasn't at least addressed somewhat, while we're talking about this, is that we just be doing this again when you guys get couple phone calls about it, and not you guys particularly, but the next group of folks that live there, who work there, you know, in 7 years, whatever, you know, that's my fear if we left it alone, like exactly how it is now as far as the trash and stuff. I will mention though that I bugged my landlord to no end in the house that had all the traffic and contributed a great deal to the trash that is right next to not the paper street, but the two lots that have the creek running through them. The yellow house that probably a lot of people know that had parties all weekend and, you know, dozens of cars and really contributed to the trash on the Clarendon side. My landlord happened to be their landlord when we went to look it up to complain, and that has stopped. Like, it's been about 5 weeks, and the parties, the literally 20 to 25 cars that were out there every Saturday and Sunday morning when I went to work at like 6. And that's really, as far as our side of the street goes, and not so dumping, but just like trash everywhere has really minimized it, just throwing that out there. That property has been a problem for, you know, years and years and years, in our particular part of the neighborhood. As far as disruptions, but also trash.
Right. Thank you. Anybody else wanna share a concern or fear they have if we do nothing on this site?
I'd say if we do nothing, my concern is about continued loss of biodiversity. When we're losing 1 to 2% of our insect population and biomass every year because insects don't have the plants they co-evolved with. That to me is a concern about leaving invasive species that starve our moths and our caterpillars, our butterflies. You know, what's there now, the privet that you like, they cover that blooms for about a week, but it's not really it's not helpful pollinator source because it only flowers for a week. If we could actually be really intentional about planting things that'll bloom from March through November, you know, we could actually increase the biodiversity of that site and make it something more valuable for the entire food web that is built around, you know, light comes to plants. Bugs eat plants, mammals and birds and reptiles eat bugs, and I just think when we had the site visit a couple weeks ago, when we walked through, there wasn't much buzzing around, and I went back to my health strip and I have a patch of mountain mint there. And I was like, why are there more wasps and bees and things buzzing around and, you know, my little square feet of health strip compared to this site. So I think that's my biggest concern is letting it continue to degrade and actually be negligible for wildlife.
Thank you. Last call for anything else on the, if we do nothing, or if we do something, anything else that you'd like to add on this? To contribute.
We're not doing anything, we don't plan anything basically, like there is an opportunity here to like, provide some data about these preferences, so essentially we just have some discussing ideas. These things are never recorded and at least discussions happening around those preferences, and I think that essentially understanding the trade-offs that can come from different pathways is really important.
Okay, thank you.
And I think the only thing I'll add is, I'm really on either side, but it was a point that was already made around kind of the long-term maintenance. But I think it'll be helpful for us to understand what the city's like role will be in that, and to understand it now, right? Like Amy said, like there's the mowing, it doesn't seem like it's happened regularly. Maybe the pandemic, COVID was the reason for the gap, I'm not sure. But, to understand what the city does now, and like, if something were to happen, what would the city be committed to? Would that change at all, or is this just all gonna be residents one way or the other? Like, if we do something, it's gonna be on residents to maintain. If we don't do anything, it's gonna be on residents to maintain. I think understanding that would be helpful for the conversation.
Of course, I can address that now. So as it is the Sprunt Avenue site, the only maintenance that happens there, and this is by North Carolina General Statute and City Ordinance, is around the sewer easement piece. So that, they will mow that. I think it's been mentioned at least once a year. They may go again if they need to access the line. But the point of that once a year maintenance is, or it's really inspection related. They're going and making sure that everything is in working order. There's about a 30-foot berth, along the center line, so that if they have to trench in 15 feet, this one is technically a high priority line, so it requires that berth along the center line of it. But the city legally has no maintenance responsibility, because it is not technically a city street, so the paper street lives in that legal gray area that I've mentioned. Like a city road, you can call and say, there's a pothole here, this, that, and the third. The city does have to fix that. Yes,
So. I understand that about People Street, but my understanding is that the city owns the 2 lots next to it, right?
the lots next to it are owned by the city.
Right, but it doesn't, it seems like the city looks at it as one lump thing and sort of shrugs and doesn't it, because honestly. The city should be taking care of the lots and then we should worry about the easement part that the
Right.
clearly Sprunt Avenue part, but it
Yeah.
seems like the city's just sort of. Shrug the whole thing off, like
Mhm.
the collection you did for the garbage, that's probably
Right.
the first time it's been done, and God knows how many
Right.
ever, you know?
Yeah,
Because the city thinks of the whole thing as not their responsibility, which is fine,
I did.
I just like clarification on that,
Right.
you know, because. That'd be very.
Actually, it's not fun. If anybody here owned those lots.
Yeah.
We'd get a citation from the city.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
And so, from my perspective as a property owner, I don't give the city a buy on that card and so. At all.
Are there other neighborhoods in Durham where this is the case, and is it happening there too? I don't know how.
Like the invasives,
Or just city owned lots that are.
Yeah.
Adjacent to Paris.
Yeah,
exactly,
right, city of Lyon specifically.
correct. The reality, full transparency is yes, it is an issue, and I do think that. Internally, I am still trying to figure out what is that maintenance standard and why is it, to your point, and I've had conversations with city staff and they're like, another place would get cited, right? So
Yeah.
personally, I'm trying to also understand where does that disconnect happen? I don't have the answer to that, unfortunately, but that is something that, I mean, part of this work for me is discovery on all of that, bringing in the right stakeholders. I think a lot of times what happens in the city is that there are so many different stakeholders that have a kind of a vested interest in any one piece of land, perhaps, for obviously in this case. That sometimes it's like, well, we're not sure whose it is, and then the conversation doesn't continue to happen. I view my role part of it as to kind of be that person who's like asking those questions, why isn't this happening? I believe that us asking the sewer maintenance team to come out and look at it did encourage them to reach out, because we didn't say, can you please mow this? But I think that us having them.
I reviewed, they did it yearly
Right,
for 8 years and then
Yeah.
they stopped for 3
Right.
years. And so I've been encouraging them to do it, and then they came and they mowed right next to the street, parallel to the street, the wrong path.
yeah.
And then that path that they mowed immediately filled with garbage.
Mhm.
And then they came, and then I called them again, and I said, what's going on with this? And they said, we did it, we mowed it.
Right,
Like, what's the problem? And I said, you mowed the wrong spot. And then they came back and they mowed a wider spot. So for those years that they had mowed annually, they mowed up to where they needed to access
Mhm.
the manhole or whatever
Right.
that's there. This time, they had contracted it out to a different company, and the different company came and just mowed clear to the other side of Sedgefield
Okay.
and much wider and mowed
Yeah.
down stuff I had planted. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, annoying, but it's good that they maintain that. I mean, it makes it easier to maintain that barrier for me in my yard, but,
Right,
and I like the once a year, they mow once a year and then it's covered up within a week, I mean, in 2 weeks.
yeah,
You know, depending on what time of the year they do it, it's inaccessible again. You know, but they're still keeping anything major from going there so they can access.
and yeah, my understanding is that it is like it's been contracted out, right? And so I don't know if it's a service agreement level thing where it's like not super clear to the contractor where they're supposed to mow. So those are the questions that I have, right? Cause I'm like, why is there inconsistency here? It's a high priority line, by, state statute. But it wasn't being mowed, we have it on good authority, right? I mean, I've been at this for a couple months, so I don't, I'm not fully abreast to how often, so I trust you all to tell us that, and it is a question where you're like, I'm just not sure why. But, kind of to the larger point, Brandon, is that a lot of the Sprunt Avenue Paper Street piece, anything that does or does not happen, it is still the city's perspective is that it is a resident responsibility to do anything they want, right? If that's cleaning it up, it's that. We have organized a couple cleanups, as part of this work and as part of the conversation. KDB, Keep Durham Beautiful, a lot of y'all are aware of, they help organize some of those cleanups. But a lot of times those are run by residents. And so unless somebody is putting that through Keep Durham Beautiful to gather volunteers, or maintaining it internally, I just don't know kind of, there's no set cadence on that. The city lots piece, I think that is an interesting conversation as a whole, right? Because it's like, let's say the city comes in and removes invasives from that and gets it up to code. Is that, I mean, what's the impact there? So I think that is a larger piece that we are still trying to understand. I'm trying to get a better grip from the real estate team as to, are there plans on this spot? I think it was mentioned that there may be, at one point it was earmarked for affordable housing, but I don't know what plans.
There's a creek there that I think is
The
protected.
third lot though
I agree.
is the one you're talking about, right? Cause I know that there's the two, I think the lot on Clarendon. And then there's two on Sedge, I feel like the one farthest out on Sedgefield is buildable. I think the other two are not.
Yeah.
I think that, well, maybe not, this.
There's one brother house that has probably pretty.
Yeah.
Oh, from the city.
The whole,
So
yeah,
the
that
ones that are
one.
like pinkish are the city lots.
Oh, so the creek goes through even the
Oh,
one on
no,
Sedgefield
yeah, even
as
the one on
well, so,
Sedgefield,
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so definitely can't build on the Clarendon
Yeah, right,
one,
so-
I would,
yeah.
maybe the Sedgefield one is close to the street.
The reason the city owns it is nobody can build on it.
Right,
so
yeah.
nobody
Yeah.
can
No one
sign
wants
it.
it.
Number one,
Right, right.
yeah, city can't
Would
sell
the city let us buy it, you know?
I mean, that's a question that we can ask, right? And I think part of the whole conversation and spirit of this grant too is being, a conduit for people who are, if you have a concern, I have the contacts, I know who to reach out to. Sometimes it is a better chance of getting answered if it has a @durhamnc.gov email sending it to another city employee, right? So I think part of the whole point of what we're doing here is kind of trying to hear residents say what they're saying and then trying to get some answers, and I have curiosity around it as well.
Yeah, that's what's across the street.
So. We emphasize other maps, but that's a really nice one to lay out our predicament for the,
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while, yeah.
And I do have another map, that was put together that has like aerials and a kind of a step-by-step around it that I will share out. I'll have a follow-up here that kind of puts all this together. A summation of what we've had, and then I will send some resources there. I'll send a GIS map, and then I can also send those kind of mock-ups that have some more ecological details around it.
that would be great.
Did I answer your question fully, Brandon?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, it seems pretty I mean, I'm just like, it's complicated. It complicates it a lot more to me, I think, on some level of that. Just a question of kind of like, yeah, like the city not taking care of those 3 lots, right? And like this one, it seems like residents, could be doing work the city should be paying for, like at least whatever, to me, one option, maybe an option could be whatever money the city would contract out to pay a service team to keep those 3 lots up to code. Would you just pay neighbors, if neighbors wanna like take responsibility and like lead what, could you just set aside that money for neighbors? I mean, obviously, it's still the labor is there, but like, maybe people could get stipends or whatever to like do whatever biannual cleanup or whatever is needed there. Cause the city's not doing it, right? Like, but their taxpayer money should be going to like keep those up to code, so it's not,
Yeah.
and if those are bad, it's impacting the paper street with, so it's like, to me, there's some kind of way to like get some responsibility for all of the land together there. And whether or not, I don't know, if residents feel like, if neighbors feel like we can come together, feels like getting neighbors some money to do that, would be ongoing money. And then maybe that's one way, I don't know.
I think when we don't have the small area plan folks here who are separate from you guys, Carl, I do recall him saying that in the broader scheme of things, these sites were also a potential area for something like that within the small area plan about like what potentially could happen as far as like from the city. I think that there is opportunity there, and within that, there was the Love the Block. And I think maybe that's how they're trying to spearhead it, and just to give folks like some historical information.
Right.
I live right near the site, and I got a flyer on my door in what was it, March maybe, about the Love Your Block. And I totally nerded out like I do with a lot of things. And went all out and was like, this is awesome, like maybe this site would be appropriate. For a limited amount of funds, what was it, $5,000?
Up to.
However, there's so many projects to where we were trying to allocate little bits of that to different projects throughout Walltown, which are up and running. I got real into it and broke these guys in and was like, this maybe could be just the cleanup along the street itself could be a cool potential way to use these funds and like get to know my neighbors. I think I submitted a proposal for 2,500, I believe. And that would involve just that area along the street where, it's a little disorganized, where the trash was being dumped and where in the winter it's just a pile of mud. Just dormant wisteria. Right now it's invasive or overgrowing it. And I thought this little teeny strip along the street would be a cool place to like clear some stuff out, maybe put in some natives, just make it a little more, palatable to look at. So that was my little idea, and I submitted a project for it, not thinking of any kind of park or concrete or taking trees or anything like that. Just that little strip of land would be cool with that little bit of money. And so, that was my thought. And it's brought a bigger conversation, which is fine. So that was my idea. David?
Well, I will say at this point, I'm promoting with the city, or trying to, it's a slog. To basically put curb and gutter across that paper street. And a sidewalk.
And a side.
And a sidewalk, and actually, to your point, there's a buffer there that we can jointly maintain. But that little strip of land is the only place that doesn't have sidewalk on all of Carter. And there's a city initiative to make this town walkable. There's this, the street sweepers can't maintain that end of the paper street because there's no curb and gutter.
True.
And so, I've contacted the public works director and been passed the stat. been passed instead. But, but, you know, anybody that would like to salute that flag. The city has money for sidewalks, the city has money for curb and gutter, independent of this grant. If there was a sidewalk there, and then we decided among ourselves to maintain from the sidewalk to the street, from the sidewalk 20 feet in, would make a big difference there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, with your permission, I'll send you the contact information and what I've sent. And if you could share it with the group.
Was that memo?
Yeah,
Yeah, and you did send me that, and yes.
well, if you could share it.
Sure,
And, you know, I'm asking, now, if you don't want to do it, please raise your hand and say you don't want to do it. But if you want to salute that flag, you know, I would encourage you to make your wishes known. So I'm voting.
I think the edges of the street, beautifying, fixing faces, they have the opportunity to make a great boundary of the hedges that people can't easily cut through, or, you know, to throw trash or do whatever. And it's a great possibility for part of the money from this grant. When we very first did the petition, very first heard of this months ago, and I had mentioned, you know, if it was need be for neighborhood, you know, people to get together, I have a few people who are willing to keep it clean, if that was, you know, it would be irritating to have to clean up what is essentially the city's issue and their thing, and that they've been blowing off for clearly years, you know, but, you know, whether it was the whole thing or the paper street, I would be happy to do that, you know, if that could be worked into the budget, fine, but for free, and the people I had spoken with initially also were willing to do it for free, you know, a day, a month, whatever it took. However it took to maintain it, the idea of a sidewalk. I don't know, Durham's full of places with no sidewalks, I'm not that pressed about a sidewalk not being there, you know, and did you say 20 feet in from the curb?
Well, you know,
That's substantial,
That's
call it 10,
Okay.
but you know, you say you maintain something. You know, sidewalks is what you maintain, and property owners have an obligation to maintain the green space between the sidewalk and the street. You know, that's a defined function that we could either volunteer to do or call the city and the city not do. But
Yeah, it's both private, those are weird spaces, right?
I'm sorry?
They're both public and private, right? People
Yeah.
can put political signs in them,
Yeah.
but like, if you're the property owner, you know, like, you
Yeah.
maintain it, like, it's, yeah.
But, you know, there is, and I hear you, and I encourage anybody that objects to this to raise their hand. Well, raise your hand to the city. But from my point of view, the city has said, we want to be walkable. You walk down Clarendon on that side of the street, and you have to cross the street to continue to walk down. And so if the city says we want a walkable the city, then Clarendon isn't a walkable city, is it part of that? So, but again, that's me. And I will make that known. If people want to object, please do.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine if y'all want a sidewalk there, fine, you know, do that, but the idea of like clearing a space 20 feet in, that's like when they mowed. The time that they mowed parallel to the street for the first time ever, a couple months ago, that's when it filled with trash, and so if you wanna like put some kind of natural native species barrier there to keep people out next to the sidewalk. You know, fine, like the natives do that, they keep people out of the space, but if you want that to look, you know, more manicured. That's where
I think,
okay, but making it open more is not gonna solve the trash problem.
Okay, all right.
okay, I interpreted your statement in a different way. I didn't think it was to clear 20 feet in. I think it was neighbors taking responsibility for the first 20 feet in, so that like in terms of the cleanup, part, but I may have even misinterpreted that. Like not to clear it, but like that in terms of any kind of ongoing maintenance or cleanup, the neighbors would say, we'll clear the first 20 so that like that kind of visible, most proximate spark part stays clean. You know, and not taking responsibility for the whole, you know, thing.
Thank you, just
Um,
manage it.
Yeah, managing that, not necessarily clearing it out. And maybe the naturals help to do that. And I think, but to Amy's point too earlier, like it would be good. It seems like a task, like it would be to get with kind of whoever the service providers are, because yeah, when they mowed it recently, I had never seen it like that before.
never
And
done.
yeah, it
Yeah.
was, yeah, and so it was a little bit
Scary.
jarring and new. I was like, well, like, you know, and I was like, this, you know, it didn't seem like that had been part of the regular part. So I think, you know, just to kind of, there's lots of, again, like the complexity of like no ownership over this, but like make access to the sewer line. City owns those three, but they don't really keep them because they kind of play off of the paper
Yeah.
street. Like that has to be, we need some clarity,
Yeah,
real clarity
they
on
need
that.
to-
Like,
to
you
deal
know,
with their own stuff.
because
Go.
it can't, I don't think it makes sense for neighbors to commit to cleaning up all of that without any compensation. And or like the other thought, I mean, I mean, the ongoing like limbo aspect of the paper street too seems like a question mark. And I don't know, this just throwing out another, are there like eco land trusts? Like, I'm just curious, like, is there an organization that neighbors maybe could be fine with, like, who could purchase all of it and like commits to like, so that there is a responsible party that, I don't know, you know, switching one owner for another is, you know,
Yeah,
makes
they
any
get one
sense.
owner of all of the stuff, you know what I mean,
Yeah,
I say, I own this, or we own this.
we own this
This
something.
organization owns this, and we will take care of it, and we will allow access for the city once a year, blah, blah, sewer, you know what I mean, like, that would be, easier to deal with. And while I would be fine if we had to keep it kind of, you know, not disappearing, to, go into the whole thing once a month, you know, and clean up with a few things, I do feel like that would be letting the city off the hook completely, for their huge part of the responsibility when looking at the map of what, you know, versus just the paper street. But if it's what it took to keep it clean and make people feel better about the space and stuff like that, especially while we were getting to like, how can we deal with this? Make it more attractive on the outside while leaving the inside maybe like pristine, or, you know, not open to people, leaving it for nature, whatever. You know, that would be fine if we had to do the whole thing, especially while we're working towards a solution.
Justin and then Amy, go ahead.
Yeah. I have a comment and a question. So the first thing I want to acknowledge and maybe even celebrate, I don't think anyone showed up here thinking within almost an hour, we would come to some consensus that the city needs to manage those lots. So
Always be.
lots of executive independent, I do want to highlight there is some, I think, strong consensus across the board, for the most part. The question was for folks who could tell me more about that, like clear cutting, because when I saw it cut all the way through to Sedgefield, that was the first time I could actually visualize the changes people were suggesting to the space, because before it seemed unmanageable and like impossible to think about. When I was able to actually see neighbors on Sedgefield from Clarendon, like for me, that was like illuminating and exciting about some possibility. And so there's that concern about like the cutting up until maybe that access and what that brought and the people that were there and the things that felt dangerous and unsafe. Like that feels more secluded and cut off from that visibility that the clear cutting provides. I wasn't sure like what were people seeing when there was that cutting that made people really nervous and scared and really opposed to any sort of more like increased human access to that space.
Go ahead.
I mean, part of it is that every time, like, I don't use the trails on Indian Trail because I know there's always people living in that space, you know, there's been a flasher in there that I was warned about, you know, and I know who wants access from Sedgefield to Clarendon, because I know who cuts through, and it's not park goers or nature lovers. And, there's a lot that's happened in the last, but I'm not part of that consensus where I wish the city would just maintain that. Like, I feel like if the city just mows everything, then that's in code, right? I mean, that's what the city would do. They're not gonna make an effort that's not necessary. And so if people are upset that it's not in code, you know, like mowing it, the entire 3 lots and the paper street is gonna be in code. If they just mow it more regularly. And to me, that would be absolutely tragic. So
I think we're
just
talking
saying,
about
like,
trash.
I'm happy that the city is not maintaining it because I love it like it is. And the trash is like such a minimal concern to me, but I'm so happy to arrange a communal trash pickup regularly. I mean, Megan and I pick up most of the trash now, and David has picked up a lot of trash. We're the ones picking up the trash, you know, so.
Inside.
Yeah, so, and I'm happy to make that more formal and to make that a community event and to use my yard in whichever way that can, promote that for gathering space or whatever, my house. But the idea that we just want the city to maintain it is like, no, I don't want
Clarify
them.
though, just in case.
Yeah,
All I mean, when I say the city maintain it,
Yeah.
all I mean is picking up trash, just to be clear, that's
Yeah.
all I'm talking about when I say the city. You know, ideally should take care of, that's all I mean, like the
Yeah.
cleanups, you know, that should. That they got so much trash out of much of that, which was the city's responsibility, shouldn't be like a big shameful thing for the neighborhood, because the city should have been doing that for the entire 10, 20 years, however long it's been. So that's all I mean about maintaining. I don't mean any type of, you know, mowing, pruning, any of that.
Yeah.
All I mean is ideally the city should be the one going in there, picking up the trash and not trying to shame the neighborhood by saying, we got 600 pounds out. That's
Yeah.
just awful. Look at the problem, you know?
Yeah.
They should have been doing that all along.
So, here, so whenever we did a cleanup, was it on the specific paper street or did that include some of the
That
city
include-
property?
the city property.
Yeah, you guys were all up in there. Those were the city.
Some of it was
properties.
difficult to even access, and so we didn't send people, they were, we didn't send people back where, and I personally wasn't on the Sedgwick or on the Clarendon side, Lindsay, you were on the Clarendon side. Were the people on the like city lots?
Probably, we
Yes,
didn't like.
yeah,
really
you guys
need
were,
the
because
people.
we went out there
Yeah.
to talk to y'all, they were all on the city lots.
Yeah, I think the idea was like, if you see trash, you can, and you can
Yes.
grab it, grab it.
Yeah, and I'm not faulting or not faulting you guys, I'm just making the point that, you know, A, it is the city's responsibility for the big part of that. And that, you know, B, all I meant, just to clarify for everyone about maintaining
Yeah.
is just the trash issue, that's
Yeah.
it.
But I also want to add that the invasives keep people away. And so the idea that it's safer if that space is mowed is absolutely not, it's not my experience, because then there are people in the space.
Yeah, now that's
When it's
clarity.
accessible, and so,
For clarity about
Yeah.
what, other than people's like presence, less that sense of safety, because what I was hearing
Yeah.
was people being there made you feel unsafe, people who are unhoused being in our neighborhood makes you feel unsafe, that's what I was hearing. So I just
no,
want to-
people living on the trail on Indian Trail makes me not want to use that trail for recreation.
Yeah, I just want to
That's
clear
what
like
I
that
said.
was like
Yeah.
assault, robbery, like those types of specific things.
I mean,
opposed to, like,
that happens
feeling.
on our bike paths, there's sexual assaults on our bike paths, it's not uncommon, it's not uncommon. I mean, it may be not every day, but it happens with some regularity that there are assaults, and that space would just be very dark and secluded. And what makes it safe is that it's inaccessible. That increases the safety of the space. So if you add access to that space, then you open up another layer of complexity of what's going on in the space.
I don't think mowing is necessarily the answer, for the city just to come in and clear cut or mow or anything like
Right.
that. That's not really. I mean, when you say
I don't
maintain,
think- Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone's talking about.
yeah, when you say maintain, I don't
Yeah,
think
I'm
I'm
just
mowing
talking about the trash,
necessarily.
that's it, literally just the trash.
Yeah,
That's-
yeah.
that's all, I
Yeah.
would, I wouldn't want the city to take over deciding anything without us all
Yeah.
involved. I'm just talking about the trash and just, putting the city, on the spot to, deal with their stuff or not, if they can't be bothered, then we can get together and do it. But it's the acknowledgement that the city should be doing it, and you can obviously get up with whatever groups that within the city that
Right.
should be
Right.
looking at the trash thing, but that's it, just trash.
I was Yeah, and I was also gonna say, I think that if we choose to leave it inaccessible, which is fine, there's ways to make it inaccessible to where it's not currently as it is, you know what I mean? Like just not clear cutting it and making it just, oh, free for all, like for all, everybody can go in there. There's ways to replace whatever is taken out to keep it inaccessible, just in another way. It either be a sidewalk and then some, native species or whatever. So if we all agree to that, I think there's.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be transparent. My proposal included using grassland species along the paper street. Things that actually evolved for, hundreds of thousands of years here and would probably tolerate mowing once a year just fine because they used to be eaten by bison before settler colonialism destroyed the bison populations in North Carolina. And so tall grasses and flowers that would handle that and thrive, probably actually, some of them appreciate like an occasional whacking down. But I also think the other thing is that we do have to have a maintenance plan, right? I think, to me, what was exciting back in the spring was that there was so much energy, there were so many sites. There are other groups of neighbors that have been doing projects on Sedge Shoulder, up Clarendon. And we could have been doing something and developing a relationship with those other projects. So that we could have a sense of stewardship amongst us, we could have a listserv where we're gonna go out and pick up trash here, or we're gonna. Cause anything will require some kind of maintenance, even if we landscape heavily, which I think we should, will require maintenance, and the idea that nature and humans have to be separate is actually just not really accurate. Like all landscapes have been managed by people for 10,000 years in Eastern North America, so I'm thinking like. If people go in every spring to pull things out that have come up that shouldn't be there, and in the fall to cut things back or whatever, to me, that seems really reasonable. And I thought that we had a lot of good energy that we could have kind of tapped into with other people who wanted to do projects, and I would really love for us to get to a point where we can have a sense of that, but.
Yeah, Megan, I will get to you. I just wanna say, I will use like the conversation around the actual ecological piece of it. I want to segue it as a natural Q and A, because we do have horticultural experts and we do have landscape experts. So if you do have any sort of like direct questions, please feel free, and you guys feel free to chime in at any point. Megan.
Two things, absolutely the idea of, landscaping it with more natives and stuff like that in a way that's still sort of, blocked off access, whatever, but made it, more amenable to native pollinators, blah, blah, like all that. So I personally am completely, down with whether it means leaving a few invasives or none and replacing them all, however that works, I think it's great because it is unrealistic to expect that humans won't have anything to do with this, any nature that we are anywhere near, right? So I think the best thing we can do is try to be like, good stewards of it. The thing about that I think Amy's trying to get, so when we were talking about this a couple Wednesdays ago, when the people came out to the site, it's like 9:30, 10 in the morning, the guy walks up, interrupts, drunk, high, whatever. Starts kind of interrupting the guy that was with you guys, talking crazy, we acknowledge him, say hi, you stand there, oh, I love cutting through here. Perfect example of what we're talking about, there's been a lot of improvement in the neighborhood, but over the years, but people still like cutting through from the beer stores, gas stations, whatever, on Guest Road, and then cutting through, walking down, when I used to feed my feral cats behind Danny and David's house, I was constantly, even though their garbage and recycling are right there on the sidewalk, constantly picking up, beer cans, soda bottles, wrappers for Doritos, things like that, right? From people just cutting through walking traffic to other parts, of farther down Clarendon or whatever and stuff. And so I think that's personally what Amy and I are talking about, that we don't want it opened up for people to walk through or hang out in. So maybe not dangerous in the sense that we think, someone's gonna jump out and grab us at 7 in the evening or something like that, but we just don't want it to be opened up for anyone to just hang out and chill in, any bad actors.
Or walk
perhaps
through.
that aren't even in the neighborhood, but are just from it. I just clarifying that as far as my point of view. As what, we're imagining, right? So maybe not serious violent crimes, which is the nuisance of, we just got rid of this party house, do we really wanna make a hangout spot here? And make it easy for people to just step off in the woods and do what they're doing, to hide from everyone, and just, so
That's
that's.
the part that's funny to me, because like, as it is right now, it feels more like that. Than what I was thinking.
With that
it'd be.
huge mowing thing, it looks exactly like a cut through, that's, the guy was saying how it made it so easy for him to cut through, and I was just like, this is perfect example, no, I didn't pay him to be here, but this is exactly. At 9:30, 10 in the morning, what I'm talking about, that, and I don't mean to sound like, I know it sounds like classist, like gentrify and horrible, and it's got nothing to do with that, it's just that, I just don't wanna deal with that, like, I've dealt with horrible neighbors when we first moved in, really serious problems all around, you know what I mean? And just, it's finally got a little bit better over the many years I've lived here in this spot. And I just don't wanna take a step back by inviting people to just chill out in an open space. Sorry, just clarification about what you were asking about, what made it unsafe or whatever.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've heard a lot about invasives and natives, and I'm coming from New Hope Bird Alliance, and I think you've got an amazing space there. When we visited recently, lots of birds. So we have a program called Bird Friendly Habitat, and if I apply what we apply to homeowners to your site, we'd be looking at preserving the canopy trees. That's sort of like a number one. You've got some fabulous trees. They are a sign of, it breaks up all our houses wherever you are in the city. And for me, one of the things to preserve those trees is, I know, Amy, you got some advice about wisteria, but wisteria is a rank 1 invasive. It's not going to go away overnight, but it will pull down those trees. I've definitely worked on, it goes into tension. And so it's physically just going to climb to the top to find the sun. And then every vine is under tension. So your trees are suffering. So if nothing else, whether you left this space, the rest of the conversation from an ecological standpoint to save your trees, I would cut their wisteria vines. And we are now partnering up with Keep Durham Beautiful. And we're actually in Durham parks twice a month doing exactly that, because it's so important to get these vines off. And these vines that can be this big, they're not going to go away overnight. This is going to be a yearly have a go at it. And we actually use a very weak glyphosate in a dobber on the stumps. So that's one thing, that's save the canopy. Here I'm a homeowner, so I'd save ivy is another one. No, you're not going to clear it off the entire ground cover, but what we do to homeowners is tell them to cut it off the trees. So we just clear around the base of a tree and then just cut. And again, herbicide, just not spraying herbicide, it's just surgically on the stump. And so ivy, when it gets up trees, it flower, berries, and then everybody's got it. So invasives, when we're talking about it, then they're not bad, they're just successful, super successful. But those two particularly, if I did nothing else to your site, I would get the vines off your trees, because that's going to hurt the trees. And then the other big rank 1 invasive that we saw in your area is Japanese knotweed. It's a lot of material in there. It's just been mowed. You've had this, but it will come back like that. The problem with it is not only is it rank 1, but it's on next to a creek. So you've got it. This is what we call ecological pollution. So your trash is going to be 1 bottle on the ground. Next day, it's still 1 bottle on the ground. This knotweed, this wisteria. You leave 1 plant alive, or you're going to have 10 next year. And then, so yes, if you do nothing, you will lose the space as it is currently. You'll potentially lose your trees over time. You will certainly lose the ground cover to this knotweed. But what I saw, Amy, was, yes, wildly cut, really wide. But how fast did you say it grows back? I mean, you've got
In
some
weeks,
great
yeah.
pokeweed.
Yeah,
I mean, pokeweed gets to be, we tell people to be careful of it in their environment, in their own yards. Because yeah, it's super aggressive, native, birds love it, 10 foot tall. So I don't think we need to be building walls but I do think taking out certain invasives that are going to degrade your space. And if you need to introduce some other species, your grasses or shrubs like beautyberry, that's a very simple increase to the value to you and your neighbors. And then going to your curbs, we often tell homeowners is cue to care. You can have a pocket prairie or a tree and sort of messy area, but if you've got a border to it, this cue to care, then people ignore the rest of it. It's amazing how a mowed edge to a meadow makes the difference. And we, use little fences in homeowner situations. But if you can show that you care, whether it be flowers, grasses on the front, and then leave the rest of the woodland to itself.
Yeah.
It's doing fine by itself, and you've got a treasure in this city to be really proud of. I mean, I would be, you've got a creek, you've got trees, you've got natives, you just need the maintenance piece of it. And where New Hope and Keep Durham Beautiful would be willing to, we're in these parks cutting down invasives twice a month because they've been neglected. I'm not blaming anybody. There's time. We've actually planted many of these plants that have now become invasive. We did it on purpose. We didn't know. It Bradford pears. So, that's a sort of if you do nothing or if you do some from a bird-friendly habitats down.
Awesome.
Thank you.
well, I have been cutting the wisteria on all the trees that are accessible to me, easily accessible, so I totally support cutting the wisteria off the trees. The main thing is keeping it inaccessible. So if we're planting wildflowers or grasses that are low lying and that aren't gonna block that space, then that is a concern for me. But if you wanna find creative ways to keep people out of the space that enhance the health of the ecology, as long as the goal is to keep people out of the space, then we could consensus on that. Now we're talking about long-term maintenance, but what this meeting was about was a project with a set budget and a set time frame, and that's not what you're talking about.
I am in the sense of the window. If we were to do this in a homeowner's situation, we would be advising removing invasives before they go to seed. So your wisteria is a deciduous vine. So in the fall, like September-ish, is the best time to go on the attack, because as it takes in all the nutrients back into a very complex network of roots, that's the time to attack it, because it's going to take a herbicide in and it's going to send it along to all the other plants. Knotweed is currently going to seed. So, there's a time to attack these things. So, schedule your work in the future and, do it every year or as needed. But Keep Durham Beautiful has the equipment to assist.
Yeah, I mean, but you're still talking about long-term maintenance that's indefinite.
Yes,
Yeah, and
I
not
think that
a
is,
few projects.
but I think it's like a bit like extreme to say this is just like a key project. The project is bringing resources to help start a process of organizing folks to think about the long term, right? And I get it that neighbors around you all have already been dealing with this, like in small groups, folks are picking up trash, etc. But I think the reality is over the long run, like Megan said, she doesn't want to have to take off, work like over. So it's trying to like start a process whereby folks can get organized, and maybe we can find resources for that organization, right? To realize all the projects that have been funded are gonna have long-term maintenance issues. Cause they're all in these similar positions where like, maybe the city is gonna be responsible, maybe not. And so, you know, the eco lab that Aaron's starting on Sedgefield, yeah, we're gonna have to take care of that over a long amount of time, like. But now is the seed funding to think about kind of, do we want to do something? Do we not? You know, and how do we take care of it over the long run? But I mean, I think the impetus with the money, the benefit of the money coming in to start is to be able to kind of get us to a place where we can kind of get over that initial hump that like is often a barrier for folks because it's like, yeah, I don't got money to do the things like you doing it by yourself, right? Like can't really get to everything that's needed here. And so I think that's the part that's important about the moment in the meeting and not, and I mean, cause we brought up like the question, like, yeah, in the long run, who's responsible for this? And like, how do we ensure it? Maybe it's not here to your point, like the city keeping stuff to code and like mowing. So, but what are the mechanisms we need to sustain the long-term benefit and the practice that's gonna happen? You know, and like what partners can be at the table? If there's money here now, is there money that again, like the city should pour in because they own 3 properties right there and like, you know, that they can just give to neighbors to do the maintenance. Like, I think those are the things that are the benefit. And it's the deciding on leveraging this funding to start that, I think is the question. Like but this funding is not just like about the moment and not about the future. Like, but it's about whether or not we start now, or if folks decide like we need some time to do some more research, et cetera, like, and we start later, you know, maybe the funding's here, maybe it's not. But I think the impetus for the money is that it's brought us here to think about the future and get us starting in a path towards that. And that's the way I look at that part. It's not just a discrete project, like, but it's an impetus to launch, you know, into the long term.
Yeah, and I think that something like that totally fits into what we're talking about, you know. We need volunteers to do this, sort we need some of this money to pay you guys to at least get rid of some of the really, you know, not good or bad judgment, you know, just dangerous to what we're trying to accomplish. Invasives that totally, even though yes, it's a long-term issue, could totally be a bit of what we're trying to do with this space, you know, promote natives or bees, bugs, whatever we want to do with it. I think that could be a beginning, acknowledging that because this is nature and change, it is all going to be long-term, ultimately.
I will say that, as an old construction worker, as it is now, is beyond the scope of volunteers to control. In terms of getting in there with chainsaws and cutting down those trees that many of them were still dead with the wisteria. That's beyond what the people in this room times 4 is able to do. And mama, you've got some money on the table now that'll allow you to go in in a managed sort of way and get some kind of first step to cut the wisteria off and kill the roots and do the necessary things. But when I look at it, and I've participated in several African American cemeteries to clear. And when I look at that, from my perspective, and I've done this stuff, it's beyond volunteers showing up one Saturday or every Saturday. And some of it is dangerous. Some of it shouldn't be done by volunteers. So my vote is, if you've got money on the table and you can create a plan that puts something in place that has some long-term benefit, please consider picking that money off the table before somebody else does.
Julie, and then I want to be conscious of people's times and use this segue, which I love, into a way forward, so.
I was simply going to say, bird-friendly habitat again is there for giving advice. If we saw a dead tree in somebody's yard and it was at no risk because there's nobody going into that space, we would say leave it as habitat. So they wouldn't be cutting down trees, you'd be leaving it for woodpeckers. So
Well, some of them are dead already.
That's a good thing for woodpeckers.
Oh. Pardon me.
It's no danger to people.
Okay,
If there's no reason to cut it down just for aesthetics, then don't do it.
okay.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, everybody. This is an incredible discussion. I really appreciate it. The question I then have is, what could be a responsible way forward that addresses our concerns? There's been some conversation around it. I just want to formalize that piece, write it down, and then we'll put them up there. I will give about 3 to 5 minutes here.
Eric, could you give some frame to how long, would, neighbors have to make a decision before the Love Your Block funding would go away? Like, what's the end point by which you would need a decision to start a project before we can no longer use the money to start this?
We have a definitive answer for that.
Spring, we're funding on cycle 2 projects.
If the money does roll over, so right, if it does not, if there's clearly no use for it on this, then it may be advertised as available for year 2.
I will likely have to spend all the money by end of September 2026.
So you have to spend the money by end of September 26th. Could we get a commitment to hold the rollover from this? I mean, that feels like a long time to make a decision. I think we could maybe make one before then. But I'm just curious. I think that would help in terms of what's possible, like understanding what a responsible way forward means, because I think some of the information that was shared today, like getting that the notes organized, neighbors being able to kind of process and see, seem to be there. I don't want to speak to what those are, but I do think the container, the timeline will help folks be able to map what's reasonable. And so what I'm hearing is the spring is when you'll start the phase 2. So maybe at least till February, March,
I think we could do that, yeah, I think spring next year is when we wanna have money allocated for projects for both year 1 and year 2. So yes, I think February is reasonable, say, we're keeping this, we currently have money set aside, for other Welltown projects, specifically for this one that we wanted to keep having discussion about. But of course, if you don't want to do anything with it or to use it, then we would put it into our cycle 2 fund.
And can you just explain how is up to $5,000 that we have to spend before September 26th or whatever, gonna help us create some annual maintenance project that goes on indefinitely?
So we currently, a couple of projects that are going on right now, one of the leaders of the projects, they have volunteered to take care of their site for 3 years, but they're also bringing in Keep Durham Beautiful and Rewild, which will help kind of organize them going in the future. And so I think a lot of it is like continuing to bring in both organizations and neighborhood volunteers that will have the same goals that they do.
But the money has to be spent. So is the money being paid to the organization and then the organization is saying, in exchange for this money that we're getting right now, we're gonna make a 3-year commitment?
This money isn't going to either Rewild
Yeah.
or Keep Durham Beautiful. They have ongoing programming
Yeah.
funded.
So
they
where
are
is the money? How's one lump sum of money that has to be spent by September gonna promote an ongoing project? That's the.
There's an element of organizing around it. The money oftentimes isn't going into organizing the ongoing maintenance. The money is going into some of the projects that are going on right now, that sort of start that we're talking about. So it's buying native plants. But there's not money going into currently taking down invasives in some of those other spaces, because we're already partnering with organizations that do that.
Yeah, and I was saying any type of when you're thinking about organizing projects or long-term, seed money is important, right? It is the startup capital, and that's used the kind of bad VC terms, but right, it's the money up front that gets people invested, like through the, whatever we do on the front end, neighbors get energized. Somebody's like, yeah, I really like found purpose and meaning and connection with folks through this. I want to take on, leveraging our partnership with New Hope Border Alliance. Maybe you find an environmental funder that's like, oh, you have the Bird Alliance here, where like this feels like the kind of project we would fund. Like, you map out what the budget is going to be. Like maybe it only costs $10,000 a year to like do, the things that are needed. I hear David's point, like maybe there are professionals that need to be involved, et cetera. Maybe you decide like through this, neighbors coming together, the city says, oh yeah, we should be like, paying $5,000 a year to kind of help maintain this. Neighbors are doing this. We'll put in that $5,000 because we own these 3 properties. I think like no one has like a 10-year plan with the money, like not for something like this in community work. Like things often start this kind of way and you try to build towards making it happen. And so this project's not going to solve those questions, but I think it is again, like it's that seed that gives the energy to what potentially could happen. And if it doesn't, then like, I'm also just like, what would be the harm in the one-time thing that like isn't doing like, right? If it's already agreeable to like what folks want, like the one-time thing is not creating more access, like inviting people in. Like it also doesn't seem to me to be a lost opportunity or that we're losing something by investing in the opportunity to have something bigger.
Like the type of thing I think I see us like using, for example, part of this money for, the Sedgefield side. Is pretty unattractive, the way that it's just all dirt down to the creek and stuff, so maybe we find a eco-friendly company to build that up a little bit more and help make some type of border that we're talking about, and you know what I mean, without damaging the creek, not building over it. But I see it as like, that would obviously have to be professionals, right? We don't have the resources, the equipment to do that, like, that's the type of thing that I see us spending some of this $5,000 on, to get that sorted, so that we can maybe get a border going with some, non-invasives and whatnot. Like, that's just the type of stuff, I think, am I wrong? Like, that's the type of stuff we would be able to spend this money on, is, like, things that we couldn't just accomplish as volunteers, to fix up stuff, because I do agree, compared to the Clarendon side. The Sedgefield side is definitely problematic and way more wide open to dumping because of that big culvert there, basically. And I could see how people could find that really unattractive. So I don't know if that's right though.
A broader question about the culverts, and this applies to Broad Street and just literally everywhere around Durham. The ones that are fenced and blocked now are dangerous. People, the children can get their cats. The one on Broad Street, if you stand on Broad Street and look down, the drop is over 20 feet, so a child falls in there. If there may be people,
What are we talking about here?
I'm talking about where the streams go under the
street.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Essentially, if you look there, the stream often is maybe 20 feet or more below the surface of the sun. And Sedgefield doesn't have anything to prevent somebody inebriated from falling in, or some child. And the Broad Street one, which was part of this little fall, the one on Broad Street, which is also a city-owned lot, I think. If you just stand there and look down and say,
That was really.
what if the child falls in here? They could be seriously injured. So the whole thing of securing these sharp drops from sidewalks is a broad issue that really needs all up and down Third, and really the whole entire city needs to be addressed from a safety point of view.
I was kind of waiting to talk fair to you.
Sure, go ahead.
So just for me being here in the room, listening to everyone, and it just sounds like potentially the $5,000 that could be used is focusing more on maybe the right of way, what's in the right of way. I'm not sure if it's a 50 foot or 60 foot, so that would be 12 to 23 feet.
What's there?
Oh, from the,
From the back of her,
right away from the,
because you were concerned, right, mowing 20 feet in, having space 20 feet, so. Again, I'm not sure what the right of way is on Clarendon or Sedgeville, it's probably 50 foot, so you're talking that would be. Most roads are 24 or 26 feet wide, so it's 10 to 15 feet from back of curb, that would be considered public property. But again. Using the 5,000, to maybe focus on those areas on Sedgeville and Clarendon. Creating a sidewalk connection, maybe, again, I could be mistaken, working with the city to use funds that they would provide for a typical sidewalk. But you could also look at maybe other materials that could delineate the space, something a little different than just room finish sidewalk. So there's many options that you could use that could do that. And you could even have, engraved sayings within stone or anything like that. It just, there's tons of options. That's what I'm getting at. So that 5,000 could really go a long way, depending on communication and just the use of city resources. Again, using the opportunity to maybe even provide a buffer or a fence to keep kids from potentially falling in the stream that you're worried about with the culverts, for keeping people out currently for however long that may be necessary. And then that just gives you some time, at least maybe 5 or 10 years later, if you think about opening it up, pending how plant material wildlife goes, or maybe it's something that's always, it just stays closed, indefinitely. So again, to me, it sounds like to just not do anything would be a little bit I don't know, I think there's tons of potential here for what it could be. And everyone would be happy. Again, just thinking about compromise, right, where everyone could find some joy.
For contact, Brady is the landscape architect.
Yeah, that's awesome to know also, because I do think there's like a lot of for compromise with amongst at least, folks here. Like, it seems like there's a lot of, overlap between what people think. Personally, there may be definitely a consensus, over the coming months. Having the timeline about the money is really helpful. But,
So can I ask one more question? So by February 2026, there would be some type of plan that would need to be in place that everyone agreed on. To allocate that money. To be used by
September.
and so even if you're talking about seed or anything, you'd have to buy it up front and say, hey, we're gonna use this 2 or 3 years later. Make that purchase now.
Yeah, I will double check the end date of when I know this year's end date is September for this first cycle, but in the second cycle, I can double check the end date of when I want to actually have money spent, and I'll get that to everyone.
So we would be considered part of the second cycle.
I
know
think,
we're in Walltown.
I think, what I was trying to say before is, if we are not going to spend money on this particular project, we would put it into the second cycle.
Oh, okay.
So, it's getting clarification.
Which would be a different name.
right.
Okay.
I just want to quickly introduce myself, Judy Wade. We are at 1408 Clarendon. We also own the service station. We've been there since '83. We've been in our house since 41 years. We're totally against it becoming a park, a dog park, or anything like that. Everything that we have given back to the community as a family, we are highly against it. Let's start with, let's get the vines off the utility line that's been that way for 15 years. Can we fix the 2 storm drains that I've saw animals fall through, children can fall through? I mean, come on, clean it up. I mean, for years, because I'm a big yard person, I have went down and cleaned it up. And about 15 years ago, I said, screw it, nobody else cares. So I gave it up and quit going down there and trying to clean up the mess. So we're saying that, yes, we want it to be nice, but no, we do not need to open. Just last year, we had a shooting at the station where a DoorDash guy 17-year-old kid drives through the parking lot. And the guy that was with him got out, shot the gun, and it went straight through our front door. And the detective said if my husband would have been sitting in his chair, he would have been dead. So where did that guy go when he left? It ran down Clarendon to get away. So
Right.
through there, and they caught him on set, or they found him on set. Yeah. So I'm just saying, over the years, it's been a lot. We love our neighborhood. We love our neighbors. We love the community and are willing to do to give back as we always do, not to mention, oh my God, the taxes that we pay and all the money that we pay to the city of Durham. So can we just fix what we have right now? And clean it up? But you can sign me up. I've got to go back and rip some new walls. But I'm sorry, I had to come in.
No, thank you, thank you, yeah.
I will come to the city council meeting, we just got a letter yesterday.
Yeah.
It's on the 17th.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's 17th, I think.
Nice.
Yeah, Monday, I guess.
I would say, to be clear, what the council meeting for the small area plan doesn't have any bearing on this project,
Yeah.
right?
That's good.
Right,
Yeah.
right, so like, I think, cause I do want to protect the small area plan, y'all.
Yeah.
Like, you don't wanna come to that and say, like, no, the small area plan is separate. We partner with Love Your Block because paper streets were an aspect of the small area plan. And so the plan actually doesn't call for any action. What it says is that, like, neighbors will have ongoing conversation with the city about how to address these kind of quasi-public and public lands that are in the neighborhood. And so Love Your Block is a separate initiative. What we did was, I mean, cause part of the planning process is a great tool. And so what I really want to try to protect is that, one, the city is committing to doing small area planning again. Wall Towns is the first in like over 15 years. Like, we don't want to lose small area planning as a tool for neighborhoods across the city. And like, I don't want this particular, I don't want us to kind of mistake that tool with kind of like making a decision about this project. Definitely open to like disagree, whatever direction this project goes, like, should be resident driven. But the plan is really policy guidance on Northgate Mall, and it's policy guidance on other land use issues in the neighborhood. It does not have bearing on whether or not the city has to use money for, it's not a yes or no on this project. And so, I mean, I understand it made all the sense for folks to come out to the public hearing, right? We didn't have that context, and it's not been clear. But the reasons why we overlapped was because that there's no money with the small area plan, right? It's policy guidance. It does not set a budget, but it tells council like what it may give priority to over time for a neighborhood. What we saw was like, oh, we have Love Your Block, we have participatory budgeting that are like running concurrently with this current planning process. Let's give folks a way to access money potentially to talk for the issues that we're already talking about with the plan. So the issues that the plan is recommending, we try to address like via policy. Like, let's have some opportunities where folks could actually turn those ideas and get funding to advance them, right? And so we were able to do that. I mean, there's already 4 other projects that got funded, in the neighborhood with Love Your Block. This is right a 5th one that's separate. And PB, I haven't heard. I want to check about PB because I was like, but like PB folks came out to that session and were able to propose ideas separate, right? Like, it had the plan doesn't like have control over what gets funded in PB, what gets funded in Love Your Block. They just overlapped in a way in which made sense for us to engage both of those initiatives. So what I would encourage people to come out on the 18th and say, yes, we want the plan. I look at the plan, because what the plan just gives resident control. It allowed us to be able to say, these are important areas. These are things we do want to have the city continue to dialogue with us on and like put focused attention to. In particular around the mall, it really kind of helps advance the vision that residents have been shaping for that. So just want to make that clear distinction, right? Like, you don't need to like offer, if you don't want something to go forward with this project, that's Eric and Lindsay's, like, that's this team, this initiative, the Love Your Block initiative. That's where you want to direct all of that energy, not in a public space where it can be misconstrued that like we don't have support for the broader plan and like and what that means. That's just my case. That's my
I'd
take.
like to brought that
To
up.
say, hey, just because, you know, I have issues, that doesn't mean that the whole thing isn't a really great idea, like, you know, how they laid out X and low income.
Thank y'all.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
You know what I mean, and I wanted
Yeah.
both the city and state support, you know, the idea of especially the Northgate Mall, you know.
Mhm.
Blah, 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 support the idea of the whole thing, you know, that just because there was, you know, a reaction that's specific to go and say, but this whole idea is great for, you know, the planning folks and you guys to carry on with, you know, that we really support that whole, the big thing that they're doing.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be able to share that, because I do agree, like, again, like, you know, I was one of the folks that came in with, man, Walltown Park is gone, like, we could use it, you know, and so when I heard that folks like, no, we don't want a park, it's a, you know, as like, that's totally, I'm totally for the kind of dissent and like folks being able to speak up and for neighbors being most proximate. I'm really not trying to drive a particular solution there. I live at Inglewood and Onslow, but as part of the community association and we were facilitating, I did want to be engaged in the process because I felt like driving resident engagement is the like plus thing here. And the value I see is like the more we can have neighbors who like are motivated and engaged and connected and can be resourced for the connections that they want to have to the community, I think that is positive. Like, but you know, the decision about what happens there, I think is totally up to folks like in the space on those blocks, like in that area. I think that should be driven there, you know, and I'm not like tied into that, but again, the plan is like a separate piece from the Love Your Block initiative, and I want folks to just understand the distinctions between the two. And for me, what's important is to understand the opportunity with Love Your Block, you know, and it could be an opportunity that we decide for this part doesn't make sense, right? But I do think there is potential in the initiative itself, and that's going to happen with these other 4 projects as well. But just wanted to be able to say that.
Thank you. Amy?
I just wanna suggest a responsible way forward.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And also to thank you all for being so, making such an effort to really get, people talking and involved in the process. The Love Your Block, just to address the perimeter of the space along the street. For whatever that turns out, people want that to look like, but not entering into the interior of the space, separating those two issues. And the 1400 block of Broad Street where that fences that seems to keep getting hit by cars or something because it's always smashed, but I that was part of the grant proposal that I submitted. This is exactly what I submitted, was just tidy up the perimeter, whatever will satisfy people to stay out of the interior of the space, because I think invasives are a longer term project.
You can write that down for us, please. So unfortunately, we are basically at times that we don't have the full opportunity to share out all of this. But whatever you have, you can leave those there. We'll go ahead and put that together. Megan.
I just wanted to make sure I give you this.
Okay.
And it's just in response to the
Sure.
question you
Sure.
asked. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I read the die. I hope you can read it.
It's all good. Thank you. Next steps, the immediate next step is to take all of this information and find the most. The best way to condense it and synthesize it and send it out to folks, so there's a recap, especially for people who weren't able to make it here. We have the recording. Kudos to whoever sits through the 2 hours of it and not being able to discuss it, but it is there for folks. And so then Brandon and I will continue to have a conversation a little bit. And so no decision was made here today. That was never the intent. I think it was always just to have a conversation. And for that, I really appreciate everybody coming out on a Saturday.
Thank you guys so much for doing this.
Sorry, in that.
Of course,
Thank you.
yeah. So, yeah, and then, we will, I think there will also be some kind of information or like opportunity to continue the conversation independently, just kind of like gathering, like who's interested in keeping up this conversation as well. But that is the immediate next step, is to just send everybody out this information.
If any, I would like to get a couple of emails that I maybe are already on like the list, you know, but haven't been able to put like faces to names and stuff unless people feel like that's intrusive to just sort of put together. If we want to continue a conversation, you know, about just ideas.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
can, I think I'll think about the best way to kind of gather that information,
Yeah.
and then, you know, you and I can have conversations as well.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Is that list, are folks in the room okay if the sign-in sheet is made public? Like shared with this group?
Yeah, that I am definitely. I'm specifically with anybody who maybe wants to set a date for any trash, you know, stuff. That's what I'm.
Are you all okay? Like when you share out the notes there, could you share
yeah,
the list with us?
because this is how I will send it out to.
Out of those, right,
Yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, I think this will be the best way, and then, if anybody here wants to forward it or include anybody else, loop them in, feel free, of course, yeah, I think that makes sense,
Good, good.
yeah.
I'm hesitant to say anything because I know we haven't really talked at all. But I mean, to me, again, hearing what everyone has to say, typically we do a design shred. And like, for me, it'd be pretty easy to just draw up a couple options for you guys, like in the room of like potentially what you might want to see using that funding. If you want to set a date later on, again, like I said, hope I didn't jump the gun on that, but you know, it's no problem for me to do this again in the same room. If we all just want to, hey, you know, what do we want to see here? Like I said, just it's a way to bring the idea,
Yeah.
at least to a, you know, 2D graphic that we can say, yeah, I like that, or no, I don't. And so I just wanted to throw that.
No, I think that would be helpful, I think we could just think about, you and I can keep talking about the best way to get
Yeah,
that set up, and
Yeah.
so on and so forth.
Like I said, you know,
Yeah.
totally transparent. We literally did not talk about it.
No, I appreciate it. That is all I have for folks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
So again, thank you, and if you wanna take snacks to go, please do, because there are plenty.
Thanks, Eric, great job.
Thank you, yeah.
Oh, yeah, Debbie, I'll fix it. Yeah, we'll start.